Hi there, grief growers. A quick note before we get into today's episode. I'm taking the month of December off the podcast to rest, reset, and make space for my own life after loss. This time of year, which I affectionately refer to as the tilt, can feel especially tender for me and for so many others. But instead of going quiet, I'm re-airing the 4 most popular episodes of 2025. These are the episodes that listeners and viewers on YouTube came back to again and again. So if you are grieving, caregiving, or just trying to survive this holiday season, I hope they offer you something steady to lean on. And because the holiday season and the turn of a new year can stir up so much, memories, dread, pressure, rage, all of it, I want to make sure you have support. You can join Life After Loss Academy for 1 month free with the discount code New Year's Grief. This is my online grief community filled with practical tools, weekly support calls, and a space where your grief is always welcome. Again, that is New Year's Grief, all caps, all one word. If this month feels complicated because time keeps going for better and for worse, come be with people who get it. Thank you for being a listener this year and growing through grief with me. Now here's today's episode. There's kind of 2 different directions I can't imagine what you're going through takes. The first is, I can't imagine what you're going through. It's like, well, you can imagine it, but you don't want to. And the other one, I can't imagine what you're going through, is you actually can't imagine what I'm experiencing, so we are not related. We cannot relate. There is no thread or string or tether tying us together. We are entirely separate entities, and there is distance in pain in both of these tracks that I can't imagine takes. Hi there, grief growers, and welcome back to Grief Grower. I am in the dead center, all puns included, of probably the griefiest week of the year. I did an Instagram or a Threads post recently, I did both, recently about how this time of year has replaced the holiday season as the biggest, griefiest time in my calendar. It used to be Thanksgiving and the lead up to Christmas because my mom died the day after Christmas, and we found out that her breast cancer had come back around Thanksgiving, got the news she was going to die a week before Christmas. We're told she had 6 weeks to 6 months to live, and then she died in 7 days, the day after Christmas. And so kind of that whole season of Thanksgiving and the lights going up and people singing carols and giving gifts to each other and like things being merry and bright was always the worst part of year for my grief. And it's the worst part of year for a lot of people's griefs because the holidays can be really hard in general. There's an expectation to perform joy. And also, if you grew up in the South like me, like send out a Christmas newsletter of like, here's all the amazing things that happened this year. And that has never been my reality. But only recently in the last 3 years has the month of May become probably the worst season of my life. There's Mother's Day, which I graduated on Mother's Day more than 11 years ago after my mom died. My best friend died suddenly from COVID on May 13th. So I literally just passed that milestone, and the one that's coming up for me tomorrow, by the time you hear this podcast on May 16th, will have officially been 1 year since my cat, who I adopted while I was in college, died. And that's a big one for me. I think a lot of people don't acknowledge or recognize how big or significant pet loss is to our lives, but pets are so interwoven into our routines and our rituals and how we go about our days that to not have them here and to not have him here for a whole year now is really like wild to my brain. And I still am in that place with my best friend as well. To not have had her here for 3 years is really boggling to me. Like I do not comprehend how that is real and true. It has felt like forever and nothing all at the same time. And I'm in that section of grief still where it seems like time is moving very fast and time is moving very slow, but it's all happening all at the same time. So, if you have been alongside me in my work for a while, welcome back. If all of this is new information to you and you have never heard me speak before, hello. My name is Shelby Forsythia. I am a grief coach, two-time author, and founder of Life After Loss Academy, which is an online course and community that has helped dozens of grieving people stop feeling stuck and alone and start building lives that they love that include the losses that they have faced. And this includes not only death-related losses, but divorce and breakup, major diagnoses, geographic move, job loss, pet loss, and any other big loss that changes your life. And on this show and throughout all of the work that I do, I firmly believe that grief is not a thing to get over. It is something that we grow with and alongside for the rest of our lives because grief is not a problem that we have to deal with or figure out. It is a relationship that we enter into, usually by force. But when we exist and learn to coexist with grief, we are not only reminded that yes, everything will end, but it makes everything that we're experiencing right now feel all that more precious and all that more meaningful. Grief is one of these ingredients that can infuse us with a sense of purpose or value or peace, sometimes even in life, because when you know everything is not going to be here forever. I am a firm believer that grief is a doorway to empathy. It's a doorway to appreciation. It's a doorway to rearranging your priorities. That's for damn sure. It's a doorway to rest, and oftentimes, especially when you are so limited in what resources you have or what energy you have or what time you have, grief can be a doorway to creativity as well. This week, we're going to be talking about one of my least favorite platitudes to receive as a grieving person, and one that I don't receive as often anymore because I talk about this so much in public and private circles, but one that I received a lot in the early months and years of all of my losses, actually. And that is, I can't imagine what you're going through. This is one, if grievers could say what's a phrase that really grinds your gears, this is one that usually makes the top 10, if not the top 5. And to be frank, I can't imagine what you're going through is not comforting. And today on the show, I want to talk about why. Because I think a lot of people a lot of people who are alongside grievers, whether they're friends and family, coworkers, medical professionals, nurses, school counselors, soccer coaches, people who are alongside grieving people, even people in the grocery store who are checking you out at the checkout line, want to say something that's helpful. They want to be comforting. They want to acknowledge what it is that you're going through. But I can't imagine what you're going through. It feels like somebody just jabbed you in the chest. A lot of people I speak to refer to it as like an electric shock or almost like a shoving away. They can almost feel it in their body. So like I feel it in my soul for sure. I feel it in my heart. But it can almost also too feel like a pushing away in just a single sentence. And if you have been on the receiving end of these words, again, whether you've faced a death, a divorce or a breakup, a major diagnosis, or another event that has drastically changed your life, you have felt the weirdness and uncomfortableness and alienation of this phrase in response to the circumstances that you're going through. You might get it in a sympathy card. Somebody might comment it on a social media post. You might get an email or a text, so there's like a digital footprint of, I can't imagine what you're going through. And people will say it to your face. They'll say it to you in person. And yeah, sure, it's usually offered with the best of intentions. People want to help. They want to be supportive. But the positive intentions or the good intentions don't change the fact that the impact of it, by and large, with almost every griever that I've ever spoken to, is pain. And as a person who loves helping grieving people not only rebuild life after devastating loss, but also talk about the words that can help us do that and how easily words can turn into a weapon, it's something that I'm really interested in talking about because so many people in life after loss talk about these are the words that hurt. These are the words that hurt. These are the words that hurt. And why? And it seems like for as much as we're shouting, as grievers, for as much as we're shouting, the world is not listening. So this is another attempt to shout, hey, this phrase isn't helpful. But also, if you're watching this or listening to this and you are a supporter of grieving people, I'm going to give you some scripts to say instead. So this is a really deep exploration of where did this come from? This phrase, I can't imagine what you're going through. Um, how do grievers receive it? How and why does it feel so icky to them? And then what to say instead. So let's talk about where I can't imagine what you're going through came from. This, I couldn't find like a definitive, like origin point source of this phrase. It seems fairly recent, like it's not something people were saying in like ye olde times. I'm thinking like Victorian times or even within, maybe 100 years ago. I don't think people were using it then. It's fairly recent in terms of human history. And from what I can put together, it likely evolved from other expressions of empathy or sympathy, such as, I'm so sorry for your loss, or I can't even begin to understand your pain. And I think for a lot of people who are supporting grievers, especially those in grief adjacent professions, I think I can't imagine what you're going through feels like an improvement on statements they said in the past, like, I understand or I know what you're going through, which very blatantly imply that the speaker, the person trying to offer comfort, knows exactly what it's like to be in the griever's shoes, which of course is not possible. I do not like when people say, I know, or I totally understand, or I absolutely get it. I was there in my own life in XYZ, because I'm like, no, you don't understand. You don't get it. You are not living inside of my body and my soul and my spirit and my relationship and my experience of what's happening. You can get close. You may have experienced a similar loss, but just as no two griefs or no two losses are the same, no two grievers are the same either. In a support group, for example, of people who are widowed, you will not have the same relationships to the person who died. You will not have the same ages, the same geographic locations, the same childhood upbringing, and the same socio-demographic circumstances, to say the least. Not to mention, do you have children? Was one of you working inside or outside the home? What was your financial situation like? How did they die? Like, you can't ever say, I know exactly what you're going through. So I imagine for a lot of people, I can't imagine what you're going through felt like an improvement on that phrase. And sure, it was probably built or designed or invented, however it came to be, with the intention of comforting people and to relay the fact that grief is unique. We've stopped assuming we know what grievers are going through. We've stopped saying, I understand, I relate, I know, and started saying, I can't imagine what you're going through. And in theory, that's supportive. But instead of drawing the person who is offering comfort closer to their griever, instead of kind of bridging that gap or that distance, it creates distance. It pushes grieving people away, because kind of like these other phrases that have gone by the wayside, it has the appearance of deep compassion, but the impact of it is shallow and dismissive and painful. And in a grief illiterate culture, largely grief illiterate culture, if you're listening to this, you're trying to change, and that's wonderful. But for the most part, our culture prizes things like positivity and control and productivity and silver linings. So it's like, clean up grief as fast as you can, get over it and get back to your normal life. It can be a lot easier to say something like, I can't imagine, in passing to a grieving person, kind of like a drive-by platitude. There you go. Can't imagine. Okay, bye. I've taken care of that. On my to-do list, I've taken care of checking on that person, and I've marked it off of my to-do list. It takes a fair bit more time and more energy and more presence and focus to pause and take a moment to come up with something that is more empathetic and, frankly, more personal to the loss that they faced. Here's why a lot of people think this phrase is comforting. I think the first reason they think it's comforting is because they don't really know what else to say. It's a thing on the shelf that's like, that appears comforting, and so I'll put that in my cart and deliver it to a grieving person. But I think for a lot of other people who are trying to offer comfort to someone who's grieving, they are overwhelmed by the intensity of your loss or the suddenness of how fast it happened. This was true when my mother died and when Tammy died, and frankly, when my cat died as well. I have known nothing but sudden losses, which is wild to me. Or maybe the complexity of your grief and all of the moving parts of it is really overwhelming to them. A lot of other comforters or people who are adjacent to grieving people say something like, I don't want to make them cry, or I don't want to remind them of their loss. Grievers know we can never be reminded. We're always thinking about it. And I think a lot of people, especially in this day and age when language is so important to all of us for a lot of different reasons, tons and tons of supporters of grievers are terrified of saying the wrong thing. And there are so many articles, including this one, that exists on the internet that I'm reading from right now. You can find it at shelbyforsythia.com/blog, that say, Don't say this. It's not helpful. And frankly, that scares people, very rightly so, who are trying their best to offer comfort. And that is why the second half of this is going to be about what to say instead. So, with all of those fears and worries and concerns in mind, both things that they are personally afraid of and things that they're afraid of sparking inside of you, the grieving person, they land on something that they assume is helpful and humble. I can't imagine what you're going through. And I think for so many people who are alongside grievers, this feels safe. This feels like a safe script because it avoids assumptions. I don't know what you're going through. It doesn't risk comparison, like when I was grieving, uphill in the snow both ways, etc., etc. It is short and very easy to send across any medium, text, email, social media, in person, over the phone. And it communicates that your grief is big. There is a great magnitude. I can't imagine what you're going through, so there must be a lot of it. But beneath the surface of this, and I kind of alluded to this before, it's more often about the speaker's discomfort with grief than the griever's actual experience. There's a wonderful Time article about COVID pandemic grief from Rebecca Sofer, who we had on Grief Grower in episode 4. And she writes, the truth is, it's not that speakers can't imagine the experience, it's that they don't want to. In saying that the deep loss someone is feeling is too unbearable to picture, what speakers are really doing is drawing a line between them and the grieving person. This is not mine, it's not ours, it is only yours. This grief belongs only to you, is the implication in what she wrote. And that is precisely what I Can't Imagine does. It politely sidesteps the vulnerability of being with grief and being with the person who is grieving, and bearing witness to grief together, and it keeps the onus of coping entirely on you, the grieving person's shoulders, entirely on your shoulders. So if you're a supporter of a griever right now, or you're a grieving person who's like, why is this harmful? I've actually never heard this before. We can all learn together. This is what students and clients have told me when they hear, I can't imagine what you're going through. This is kind of the bloop, bloop, the translator machine that happens in their brain. 1, your life is too horrific for me to even relate to. 2, I'd rather not get close to your pain. 3, this is genuinely unimaginable to me, so I won't even try. 4, your reality is my worst nightmare. 5, something like this would never happen to me. And 6, you and I are fundamentally different. Even if it's not what the speaker means when they're trying to comfort you, the grieving person, the impact is what matters. There's kind of 2 different directions I can't imagine what you're going through takes. The first is, I can't imagine what you're going through. It's like, well, you can imagine it, but you don't want to. And the other one, I can't imagine what you're going through, is you actually can't imagine what I'm experiencing, so we are not related. We cannot relate. There is no thread or string or tether tying us together. We are entirely separate entities, and there is distance in pain in both of these tracks that I can't imagine takes. There is a really wonderful piece on modern loss by Kim Goldman, and she says, when someone doesn't know what to say, I can't imagine is a phrase that many of us hear. It's said to simultaneously confer great weight upon the situation at hand, while also allowing the person commenting to distance themselves from it. Neither can I is always my response to I can't imagine. I say it to make the point that it's so horrendous that even I, the one who is living through this experience, can hardly believe I am living through this experience. The only difference between me and the person trying to offer me comfort is that I was not afforded the luxury of not living through my child's death. Exactly, Kim. Exactly. Grieving people already feel as if their pain is too big and too much and too inconvenient for other people to handle. And when they hear that someone can't imagine what they're going through, it reinforces this idea that they are othered or separate or untouchable or broken. And not only that, but despite the fact that there is a very real human person communicating with them who wants to comfort them, that human cannot or doesn't want to imagine what they're going through, so the grieving person is left to deal with the fallout from their loss alone. It is exactly the same as saying, I see your pain from way over here. And for people listening on the podcast, I am backing up from the microphone. I bet you can hear, I see your pain, but I'm way up here. I'm way over here. I am touching your pain, as they say in the Grinch Christmas song, with a 39.5-foot pole. And so it's like, I'm here for you, but like from like 12 blocks away, or from 8 states away, or from 15 countries away, or from 80 planets away. That is what I can't imagine what you're going through feels like to people who are grieving. I want to say kind of clearly, and I hope this metaphor comes across, that the word imagine is not the problem. Imagination itself is not the problem, because when you use imagination to support grieving people, I'm talking to supporters now, it can actually be a bridge between you. So instead of saying, I can't imagine, to say, I can imagine. Because here's the irony. Generally, you, supporter, people who are talking to grieving people about their losses, they can imagine what they're going through. You as a supporter, you might not know exactly what it's like to lose your person or experience your griever's specific loss, but you can imagine fear. You can imagine despair. You can imagine feeling stuck or confused or unmoored in lostness and uncertainty. You can imagine longing or aching for somebody who can never come back, or waking up over and over again in a life that is worse than you ever expected it could be. And when you, as a supporter of grieving people, do try to imagine, even clumsily, even imperfectly, it creates connection with the person that you're trying to comfort. So many of the people I work with in Life After Loss Academy say that having a friend or a family member or a coworker picture their loss, actually try to imagine, and then offer compassion from that sort of empathetic imagining. This is a term I'm inventing right now. It doesn't require perfect words. It only requires that you be honest about the horror or the agony or the uncertainty that you are imagining. It's like you're putting yourself in their shoes to the best of your ability and responding to that with kindness and empathy. And what that does is shows that you are willing to put yourself in a place with a grieving person and sit with them in their sorrow instead of shrinking away from it, or again, kind of touching it, but like from way over here. So here's some things to say to grieving people instead of, I can't imagine what you're going through. And if you're a grieving person and you want the people in your life to say something different, these are things that you can also offer as substitutions. So you could say something like, I don't resonate with I can't imagine what you're going through. It makes me feel like you don't care to imagine what I'm going through. I wish you could say this instead, or I would rather you say this instead. And that is a boundary you can draw for yourself as a grieving person. It's not fair that we have to be the teachers of our grief and also be the people who are grieving, but this is a burden or a task that is, for now, until society can do better, firmly on grievers' shoulders. I am with you through it. And we'll talk more at the end of the episode how you can set even better and even clearer boundaries with the people in your life as you grieve. Okay, here's some scripts for you. I am heartbroken that you're going through this. I've never experienced what you're facing, so you delineate. You're like, I don't know what you're going through. Can't imagine, but it's another way of saying that. I've never experienced what you're facing, but I want to understand more if you're open to sharing. Tell me a story. Or what does your day look like? How does your heart feel in this moment? Asking opening questions that show your grieving person that you're interested, as opposed to saying, I can't imagine what you're going through, full stop, is a really lovely way to keep conversation going, as opposed to putting a big fat period on the end of it. I don't know what to say, but I'm here with you in it. Very simple, very effective. I'm imagining how painful this must be, and I wish I could make it easier for you. And then if you want to be really helpful, actually offer 3 ways to be helpful or be supportive, or 3 practical things you could do to help: mow the lawn, get the mail, address some envelopes, whatever the case may be. Think about what your gifts are and how much time you have to offer, and then offer from that place. There's a wonderful old episode of Coming Back I did with Elisa Forneray about that you could certainly go look up. It's one of my all-time favorites. Very simple one as well. This is unfair and awful. You don't have to carry it alone. And this is one of my all-time favorites. I haven't forgotten about your loss, or I haven't forgotten that you're grieving. And remembering, insert name of loved one here, or remembering your dad, or remembering your sister, or remembering your best friend matters to me. And sometimes for grieving people, just knowing that somebody else is remembering the fact that they're grieving is a really, really big deal, and does wonders more for offering compassion and empathy than I can't imagine what you're going through. And each of these phrases does something simple but also radical. They stay with the grieving person. They do not pivot away from the pain or end it again with a big fat period and move on to something else. And they don't put up an emotional barrier between you and the person who's grieving. They say, I'm here and I care enough to imagine what you're going through right now. So where do we go from here? If you have been hurt by these words, if someone has said, I can't imagine what you're going through to you, and it stung, know this, you are not being too sensitive. Your pain is real and your grief is real, and so is your need for connecting and having language directed towards you that feels safe and comforting and emotionally honest. All of those. That bar is not too high for you, dear griever. And if you are a supporter or even a griever who has said this phrase to someone grieving in the past, it's okay. I am offering you like a bucket of compassion right now because probably I have said this myself. Most of us have before we knew better, but once we know better, we can do better. So I invite you kind of for your homework to swap out, I can't imagine what you're going through for one of those 6 scripts that I offered instead, and just see what happens. The next time somebody reveals their lost story to you, substitute one of those. Keep them in your phone, keep them in your pocket, keep this podcast episode on your player constantly so you can reference it the next time you need to text somebody who has just shared a horrific thing that has happened to them. Keep it somewhere where you can see it. Or again, you can go read the full blog at shelbyforsythia.com/blog. It will always live there as well. And it's one of these things that is a small, tiny way that you can have this huge ripple impact on the people around you. You can demonstrate that you not only care, but that you are interested in continuing the relationship. It doesn't end at, I can't imagine what you're going through, which offers nothing else to the conversation. It is painful and it is unproductive. But to say, I hate that this is your reality, or I have not forgotten that you're grieving, and I care about remembering your dog who died, those are ways to keep conversation with a grieving person going, especially when they are feeling so tremendously isolated in their grief. I know without a shadow of a doubt, and this is one of the things that I'm most passionate about in my work, which is why I'm clapping my hands, but I'm clapping quietly. I'm hoping it doesn't show up on the mic. It will definitely show up on YouTube. Words matter a shit ton when you're grieving. They can build bridges or they can build walls. They can soothe or they can isolate. They can say, I'm with you or you're on your own. Words are some of the most powerful and free tools that we have to comfort people when they're grieving. So whether you're a griever or someone supporting a griever, let's all agree to be people who choose our words with care. And let's all agree to be people who imagine others' pain on purpose, even when it hurts, because this is where healing begins, but it is also where connection begins. And it is also where community not only begins, but continues. And I get chills thinking about this because this is one of the ways that we can keep our friendships and relationships and working relationships and medical profession relationships and school relationships and extended family and ancestry relationships all intact in the aftermath of loss. One of the biggest pain points grieving people talk about is, my loss happened and then I lost a ton of friends and a ton of family because they did not know how to respond to my grief, and I didn't know how to tell them otherwise. I didn't know how to teach them because I didn't have the words. And this is one of the things I'm most passionate about in my life. So if you are looking for more scripts, tips, and tools for navigating life after loss, most of them wrapped around language, I hope you'll join us in Life After Loss Academy. This is an always open online community for grievers all over the world, where every single week we wrap words around the experience of loss and use small and sometimes silly, if you can handle some fun while you're grieving, scripts to make living with grief feel just a little bit softer and a little bit more possible. And as always, you can find the link to learn more and join Life After Loss Academy when you're ready in the show notes. And if that's out of reach for you right now, that's a-okay. I hope you'll keep coming back here to Grief Grower, where I will continue to share words, stories, conversations, tools, tips, education about what it is to live a long-term relationship with grief, and not just one that feels survivable, but one that feels thrivable, that feels like there can be meaning and depth and richness and purpose and peace and maybe even hope and joy, all woven in. That's all for this episode of Grief Grower. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you're looking for grief support beyond this show, you can find free workshops, blog articles like the one I read from today, and my signature What's Your Grief Support Style quiz at shelbyforsythia.com/links. If this podcast felt validating, comforting, educational, or otherwise helpful to you, please subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And please share Grief Grower with a friend, because you never know what someone you love is going through. As always, a huge thank you to the Grief Growers community for supporting the show on Patreon. If you'd like to join them and help me keep this show ad-free, because grief is hard enough without commercials, head to patreon.com/shelbyforsythia. As a Patreon supporter, you get to help me choose new topics and guests for the show, and you're the first to get behind-the-scenes access to all of my upcoming projects, like my new book coming out in 2026. Grief Grower is hosted by yours truly, Shelby Forsythia, with music by Addie Goldstein. Until next time, Grief Growers, I see you. I am so proud of you and the work that you're doing in the world, and I love you. Because even through grief, we are growing.